In today's video, we're doing a quick comparison between three prime lenses for the Panasonic Micro-Four Thirds system. I've got the Panasonic Leica 12mm f1.4, the 15mm f1.7 Panasonic Leica lens, and also the legendary 25mm f1.7 prime. Welcome back, folks. This is Shane. First of all, this video is not sponsored by anybody, and if you get some value out of it, please give it a thumbs up. I appreciate that. I paid for all of the equipment in this video myself, so I haven't been given anything for free. This is all stuff that I personally use over a number of different YouTube channels. So if this video is helpful, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe, all that kind of good stuff. First up, let's start with my newest lens. This is the 12mm f1.4 at 1.4. So this is the Leica Panasonic lens. It also has the manual aperture ring, which I really like. And in terms of just straight up build quality, this is by far the best out of all of them. The 15mm is also very good, but this just feels like a much more premium lens. This is probably the lens that lets in the most light on the entire system. So if low light is important to you, as well as getting that wide framing, this would definitely be a great choice. And now over to the 15mm f1.7 prime lens. I've used this more than any other lens over the last few years. It's a fantastic video lens. So for me, this would be my choice if I was to recommend one of these three for general purpose or wide angle shooting. It's really, really great. So it's for better value for money, I think, as well than the 12mm f1.4 overall. Still giving you a very wide shot, still giving you lots of background blur at 1.7. The closer you are to the camera, the more of that you're going to get, but I just wanted to establish a wide shot to begin with. Up next, we're checking out the 25mm f1.7 prime. Now, I love this lens. This isn't the Leica one either. This is just the inexpensive one, and this works really great for video. I do a lot of multicam shoots most of the time at home, and this is one of the lenses I always choose. I actually have three of them. I like them that much, so I'm a big fan of these. I think anyone who's shooting video should get one of these for Micro-Four Thirds, and there's a couple of reasons why. The first one is the autofocus is really good. If you use one area mode, this is very reliable, and I'll show you some samples of that in just a moment. And I actually like the focus ring on this, with the exception of going from all the way from infinity to really close. If you're doing anything else with the manual focus ring, it works fine, but that's one of its common complaints. Not everybody loves the way that the lens feels. It does have that plastic feel to it, but overall the image quality is great, and you're gonna get a lot more of that background blur. And now we're over to an autofocus test, starting with a 12mm f1.4 prime at 1.4. So at 1.4, the autofocus is going to have to work a lot harder than it would at, say, f4. So we're going to see how we go with this. Now I'm using one area mode, and I found if I'm using one area mode and I'm in a static position like this, there shouldn't be a lot of hunting in the background. That's basically the biggest criticism of the Panasonic autofocus system, is the fact you do get a bit of that. Although the subject is still in focus, but it's weird how it works. But we're gonna see just how well each of these lenses compare against each other and how well they do on their own. So this is the 12mm Leica f1.4. And now we're over to a talking headshot using the Panasonic Leica 15mm f1.7 prime. I like this lens a lot. That's a Marcus Pick jokes, by the way. If you don't know his channel, go check it out. But this lens is great when it comes to one area mode. It's pretty reliable. It can pulse a little more than some of the other two, but overall it works pretty well in this particular mode. We'll get to face detection in just a moment, but this is how it looks with a similarly framed shot. Notice the background compression. Is it any different? Is the background blur there? I guess we'll find out in post. Over to the Panasonic 25mm f1.7 prime lens for a talking headshot, and this is where this lens shines in terms of autofocus. You use one area mode, put the box over your chest, or if you can, aim it about here, that would be ideal as well. And you should get very little pulsing in the background. And being that I'm shooting in vlog, the camera's probably gonna have to work a little bit harder to get autofocus due to that contrast thing. But overall, I really feel like this works really well on the system, and I trust it enough. Even if I was to move forward like this, it's going to lock on focus pretty quickly normally, and there it is. I've actually got the sensitivity turned down, which means you get less background pulsing at the expense of it just being a little bit on the slower side, and that's the way that I prefer to use it, because I'm never really bobbing in and out of shot a lot. Anytime I'm doing a talking headshot, I'm standing in one position, or I might just be moving across the plane of shot like this. So yeah, I'm never really moving back and forth that often. So overall, I think the autofocus performance should be pretty good. And now over to face detection mode using the Panasonic 12mm f1.4 prime lens. I've got glasses on, so let's take them off and see how it performs. I think this works pretty reliably. It's a little slow sometimes to acquire focus in face detection, but once it finds it, it should be locked on really well. Let's see how this compares up against the 15mm. And now over to the 15mm f1.7 prime lens in face detection mode. I've got sunglasses on as well, so I should take them off for this particular test. It's kind of glary out here, even though it probably doesn't look it. So how's it doing in terms of autofocus performance? Is it distracting? Is it working? I really think the GH5S has better autofocus than even my GH5 does. So we'll see how this works in comparison to the other lenses. This is where I think this lens can struggle sometimes, but you know, in one area mode, it's pretty good. And now over to the 25mm f1.7 prime lens. Now in face detection mode, it could go either way. Again, one area mode with this lens is far better and far more reliable, but we'll see how it works. Take the sunglasses off, see if it acquires or loses focus with that particular mode. I'm gonna walk up to the lens like this, and it looks like it's got focus, and then it shouldn't pulse too much, all being well. So overall, this is a pretty good lens for autofocus performance, especially on a GH5S and GH5. Now, when it comes to getting a really blurry background for product shots, all of these lenses will do this, no problems at all. And I really love the look of the 12mm f1.4 that you're looking at right now, but they can all do this really well. Although the minimum focusing distance on the 25mm f1.7 isn't as close as the other two, it still gives you great product shots, and I've been using it for years for a lot of my B-roll when it comes to my guitar YouTube channel, and even on the tech channel I'm always using the 25mm at a distance, but still getting a very similar effect. But if you really want to hold something up to the camera and pretty much make it get, you know, be the center of attention, then the 12mm or the 15mm would be an obvious choice. Now when it comes to vlogging, which is the best, I'm going to give the win to the 15mm f1.7 for a few different reasons. One, it's nice and small, you get that wide field of view, and it looks spectacular. The 25mm f1.7 is way too sort of cropped in, so you'll need a selfie stick and it will just get awkward. So if you want to do any handheld vlogging, this 15mm that you're looking at right now is by far the best. Now the 12mm f1.4 can be used for vlogging, but it's really heavy and you'll feel it in your shoulder in no time. It actually is quite heavy, so the 15mm is definitely the way to go. Now, one of the things I've seen a lot of online over the last 12 months or so is this push for full frame. Even from Panasonic, all the people reviewing the full frame Panasonic cameras are, is this the new GH6 blah blah blah, or the new GH5? And clearly it's still not. They're missing a lot of features that I love about the GH5 and the GH5S, and I don't feel like they're an adequate upgrade unless you're going for something like the S1H. So in that regard, you're going to be spending a lot more money, you're going to be reinvesting in the lenses and so forth. And I really feel like right now you can get a deal on a GH5S or a GH5 and have a really great functional camera that can help you make content or can help you capture the moments that are important to you. So in my opinion, I love the fact that the price of the Micro-Four Thirds is dropping, and when the GH6 comes out, you're probably going to see a lot of people buy that, which is going to generate far more interest again in the system. I have no plans on going full frame. For me, there's no point unless I want a really accurate autofocus camera. Then I might go towards something like the A7C, but at that price, it's still got a lot of compromises and disadvantages over the GH5S. So yeah, there's a lot to think about if you're going to be going full frame. If you can buy any flagship camera, even from Micro-Four Thirds, you're going to get some great results. So don't get too suckered into upgrading all the time. I really don't feel you need to. Let me know your thoughts on Micro-Four Thirds in general, and from what you've seen online with these content creators who basically parrot every popular YouTuber. Up next, we're going to do a low light performance test using the 12mm f1.4 up against the 12-60 kit lens. This is something that you generally get for free. It's an f3.5 to 5.6. I'm not in Vlog anymore. I'm using Cine V profile on the Panasonic camera, which is my personal favorite. Now, if you've ever seen any of my other videos in this room, I have it really well lit. There's side lights, there's two overheads and all that kind of stuff. Right now, I'm using one lamp on half power, so it's far darker than normal. I'm currently at ISO 400 at f1.4, and I'm exposed properly, but the background is far darker than you might be used to seeing it if you've seen any other videos in this room. So I'm going to swap over to this, and we're going to just see how different it is with exactly the same settings. And now you're looking at the 12-60 kit lens at f3.5. So with these particular settings, this is completely unusable. The only way I can make this seem brighter is to either add more lighting or to crank up the ISO, which is what I'm going to do now. So that was on 400, now 800, 1600, 3200. That's probably close to where it was in terms of brightness, but you're gonna see far more noise in the shadows now, which I don't really care too much about, but a lot of people do. If you're really fussy with your image quality, you're gonna probably OCD out over how much grain this would have running the ISO at this particular value. Now on the GH5S, you can pretty much get away with it, but I'm gonna switch back to this just as a point of comparison. And now we're back to the 12mm f1.4. So as you can see, this is completely overexposed now and just goes to show how much more light you get. As you can see with this image correctly exposed, even though it's really dark in this room right now, it might not look it on the monitor, but you could see how different it was than the kit lens. So this is why you'd want one of these lenses. And if you have a GH5S, you're gonna get some really great low light results. So to finish things off, I'm going to shoot the rest of this video in face detection mode on the Panasonic 15mm f1.7 at f2. So this will allow me to be mostly in focus no matter if I move back or forwards. It's still going to look good and the lighting in the room is back to normal. So if you're a vlogger, get the 15mm f1.7. It's nice and light. This lens is fantastic. The feel of it is good. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to get to the focus ring for manual focus, but the touch to focus on the LCD screen is awesome. If you've got a G85 as well, it's also a great lightweight combination for this camera, which also has the IBIS system built in. So you're gonna get stabilization from the camera mixed with that lens. Great vlogging solution. Now when I did the first seated test where I was outdoors, I was actually on manual focus. That was the only section I used manual focus on. I was slightly out of focus, so apologies for that. I didn't realize it until I got home, but you got a sense of the actual framing, which was the point of that particular test. If you're doing mostly talking headshots, go for the 25mm f1.7. The only thing is you're gonna have to move the camera further back to get the same sort of framing. But other than that, the look and the colors, the sharpness, all that kind of stuff on the 25mm looks spectacular. The only small downside to this lens is some people don't like how the focus ring feels. I don't mind that, but it does have a little bit of focus breathing, which is if you get close to the camera, it almost looks like the edges of the frame are zooming in slightly. So you do see a bit of that with the 25mm and not so much with the 15 or the 12. And last thing I'm going to talk about, the 12mm f1.4 prime lens. This is a real specialty lens. If you want to get this, odds are you need a wide field of view with low light capabilities, which is exactly why I purchased this. But I have to tell you, the talking headshots are fantastic. I can get closer to the camera than where I'm sitting right now at arm's length and have the background completely blown out. So this does that very well. It does it even slightly nicer, I think, than the 15mm f1.7, which is a fantastic lens, but the build quality on this feels great. It does have that wider field of view, and that's why you would buy it. But generally speaking, I think the best value and performance ratio out of all of these would be the 15mm f1.7, unless of course you need that extra wide field of view and an extra stop or so of light capability. But you know, it's up to you which one you need and why. But let me know in the comments what you think of this video, what you think of these lenses and all that kind of stuff. And if it was helpful, please give it a thumbs up. I appreciate that. I'll catch you on the next video. See ya.